Hey guys, Daniel Brigham here. I thought I'd share sort of key takeaways from day 2 at DevLearn 2013. So I attended something like 6 sessions, maybe more. I'm only going to report on 3 of them. That's all I feel I should report on. The first one I'd like to report on is Easy Ways to Create Interactive Video and Articulate Storyline by David Anderson. So David got me thinking about a couple of different ways to use a lightbox. I usually use layers instead of a lightbox, but he's got me at least rethinking that maybe I should use the lightbox more. So he suggested, maybe using lightbox slide as a help avatar. Or I thought this idea was cool, using it if you're creating software training, to use it as sort of a hint. So if they want hint before they actually try something, click on a button and it brings up a pre-recorded demo and a lightbox slide. I thought that was pretty cool. And he's also got me thinking about the different triggers that can cause a lightbox to fire. It's not just clicking on something. So that's something I'm actually going to go take a look at. Other points in the presentation that I really enjoyed. Consider breaking up chunks of your video on layers. So if you have this big video, which probably may or may not play that well, maybe chapter it on different layers to cut down on publishing issues and just help the learner navigate that video. And he also had this cool thing where he had markers on a slide, so you click on the marker, and the interesting thing is, so you had this, I'll back up a little bit. You had it on the base layer, you had the video, and then the markers. You click on the marker causes a layer to fire, and on the layer he had a quiz question, and I was like, well, what's going to happen when the learner submits that answer? And he had the feedback appear via a state change. So he clicked on the A button, and then that triggered a state change of the A button to give the feedback. But thought it was clever. All right, so that was the first one. The second one, Design Thinking by Connie Malamed, the e-learning coach. So Design Thinking came out of Stanford Design School, and I believe it's David Kelly, who he may be deceased just recently, the main proponent. So what is design thinking? What is design thinking? It's taking creative action to solve problems for a particular group of people, a lot like instructional design, right? A lot of corollaries there. Design thinking, though, is human-centered. Really focusing on, if you're building a chair or whatever, really focusing on the human that has to use that chair. What are they thinking about as they use it? What are they feeling as they use it? So in the design thinking method, the first, there are a couple of steps. One of the steps is to empathize. Really observe that user or the learner in our case. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And that differs from what we do in e-learning, right? I know a lot of my clients are like, no, don't worry, man. You don't even have to talk to the learner because I know it all. We're good. Where we know that's not true. So we always push. Can we talk to? Can we please talk to the learner? Can we interview them? Can we think about that? And that's kind of what design thinking does too. Very human focused. Other things in the design thinking method, define the problem. Of course, we do that. Ideate is another stage. They do it a little bit differently. They brainstorm, but they have these groups of disparate people that have like an opera singer and an e-learning developer working on, building a chair or whatever. And so you get a lot of different ideas. And what they try to do in design thinking is to have the ideas build off of each other, not replace each other, but build off of each other. Other stages, they prototype like we do, and there's an emphasis in design thinking to get to that prototype quickly. And they often will build multiple prototypes similar to or e-learning design in some ways. And then of course they test. So what makes design thinking potentially helpful for us? Well, it really takes the perspective of the user or the learner. Always a good idea. And it has a collaborative approach, combining different team members to come up with different ideas. And that's a theme. Empathy for the learner is a theme that I'm getting here. Really thinking, what's the learner thinking about? What's the learner feeling as they go through the training? Picking up that sort of covert theme in this conference. Last one I'd like to talk about: adding more character to your e-learning to your e-learning, adding more character to your e-learning by Jeffrey Goldman, who's a designer at Johns Hopkins. So some of the benefits to adding characters, and you probably know some of these, obviously that emotional connection, that real person or that real character. Characters can be a good a model for behavior, good behavior, bad behavior. They can model that. Characters can be supportive or sympathetic. And this was interesting, characters can be credible. We're often looking for ways to establish credibility or, the value of the content. And a character can have street cred. A couple of interesting ideas. He suggested use characters in places where you usually don't. I usually use characters in the course itself, but not so much in the assessment. And he's like, well, why not? That's a good question. And why stop there? Why not use them in your software simulations? Ever done that? I haven't, but I'm thinking about it. Or your job aids. Use them in different places that you usually use them. Why not? Excellent question. Consider, and this is pretty far out, he didn't say this, I'm just sort of inferring it, consider anthropomorphizing objects. So we had this phone training that he did, and the phone was a ghost, if I read it correctly, a ghost of Alexander Graham Bell. That's just creative, maybe even a little far out, but why not? Why not? Give some consideration to what you name them. He had, one of his characters was named sort of based on a company acronym, so sort of a mnemonic, which is cool. And he had another one named Captain Upgrade, so when they did these upgrade trainings, they had this character named Captain Upgrade, and that just makes you smile, and that's got to be good. Maybe one last suggestion, extend the characters beyond the course. So if they're really good, consider using them in the marketing material. Or they could be really cool on informal learning channels like Twitter or Facebook. Really works well, and I know Jeffrey does that. And use them in other courses as well. So a quick key takeaways on day 2, and I will see you for the last one tomorrow. Thanks a lot.